the acquittal of all three accused in the Chabla rape case. Chabla is in Delhi. Before we dive into the story, let's do a flashback. The date was February 9th, 2012. A 19-year-old woman was returning home from her workplace in Gurgaon. She was just 10 minutes away from her home in Delhi when tragedy struck. Three men, three predators, abducted her, raped her, killed her. Her body was found 3 days later in a field in Rewari. It was mutilated. For most of us, these are undeniable facts. But in court, even facts have to be proven, something that the prosecution failed to do in this case. As a result, the three accused were acquitted. The verdict has devastated the victim's family. The father says he has lost his faith in the judiciary.
लोअर कोर्ट की फांसी का ऑर्डर होने के बाद, हाई कोर्ट का फांसी का ऑर्डर होने के बाद 7 साल लगभग सुप्रीम कोर्ट में हो गए। उसमें बहुत उम्मीद रखी थी हमने कि हमें न्याय मिलेगा, लेकिन सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जो जज हैं उन्होंने इस ऑर्डर को अपने घर का ऑर्डर बना के बिक गए हो और गरीब को साथ नहीं दिया। उन्होंने मुलजिमों का साथ दिया है। आगे क्राइम होते रहेंगे, बढ़ते रहेंगे। इस तरह मुलजिमों को फ्री कर दिया जाएगा। तो बीत बहुत कुछ रही है, लेकिन कर कुछ नहीं सकता, क्योंकि जब मैं 12 साल से अब तक कुछ नहीं कर पाया तो अब क्या कर पाऊंगा।
Now, we are all equally outraged by what has happened, but beyond the outrage, we need to understand why it happened, why the Supreme Court did what it did. From the court's observations, it is clear that this was the failure of the prosecution. The Delhi police completely failed to prove what you would assume is a watertight case. First, the multiple lapses. The prosecution examined 49 witnesses during the trial, but 10 material witnesses were not even cross-examined. That's lapse number 1. Lapse number 2, the identity of the accused were not fully established. Now listen closely to this. No identification parade was done by the investigating officer, nor did any of the witnesses identify the accused during their deposition. Lapse number 3, the focus on circumstantial evidence. Anyone who binge watches legal dramas will tell you this. No court will rule in your favor if your case is built on circumstantial evidence. According to the Supreme Court, that is what the prosecution did. They were unable to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the accused were actually guilty.
The attitude and candor of the Bharatiya Janata Party and its government when it comes to women's safety has always been lackluster and compromising. Whether it was in Kathua rape case, whether it was in Hathras, whether it was in Unnao, and now in Kiran Negi rape and murder case, the attitude of the BJP government is the same. We appeal on behalf of the entire country and its daughters. BJP government should wake up and should file a review in the Supreme Court, should put up its best lawyers before the Supreme Court, should replace evidence and facts before the Supreme Court so that the verdict is reviewed.
So as a family grieves, there is no level which politics will not fall to in this country. You've just heard the Congress government blaming the BJP, forgetting completely that in 2012 it was actually the Congress that was in power both in Delhi and the centre. Now, question is, what happens next? Swati Maliwal is the DCW chief. She says that she has sought legal opinion and wants to see if the case can be re-investigated.
I think the message is very sad. And it's not just me. I've got so many calls since morning, and everybody is feeling the pain of this family. And that people who did this crime, even if they were not these people, then who are they? I mean, the entire system has failed this 19-year-old and her family. 2 courts have already ruled that these people are the rapists, they are the murderers, and they have ordered the death penalty. So what is it that, where did the system falter? What what has happened? One has to obviously file a review petition, and the Delhi Commission for Women, we are taking a legal opinion. What should be the way of it? What should be the method of it? And I'm also going to be meeting the family.
Let me go straight across to our guests who are joining us this evening. Advocate Charu Wali Khanna is not just a former NCB member. Importantly, she was the lawyer of the victim in this case. She is joining us on the broadcast. Yashovardhan Azad is a former IPS officer joining us on where all the Delhi police failed in this case. Ranjana Kumari is Director CSR India. Bhavya Narsimha Murthy is the Congress spokesperson joining us on the broadcast. Namit Saxena is an advocate on record in the Supreme Court. And we have Shatarupa, who's a BJP leader, who is joining us as well. Thank you all for joining us. Advocate Charu Wali Khanna, I'm coming to you first because you are the one who has argued the case in the Supreme Court. You were the victim's lawyer, importantly. Let me ask you, I understand the reaction of the family. They're obviously disappointed. Anyone who's been tracking this case is disappointed. I think there is disappointment across the country. But is there disappointment with the Supreme Court, or is there disappointment with the Delhi police? Because the statements that have come out from the Supreme Court tell us or show us that the Supreme Court itself is anguished.
I think I have an absolutely different take on this. I am upset not with the Delhi police. The Delhi police has done the best within the circumstances. But like you said in the beginning, the Supreme Court does not seem to be satisfied with the evidences and has made on general baseless grounds, they have acquitted the accused. For example, they've said that no identification parade was done. Now tell me, when the witness is saying it's dark, I did not see anyone. So what do you want the Delhi police to do? Just put 4 people in front and she should say, Ina Mina. He's been truthful enough to say that I did not see them. So where is the question of identifying when you have not seen them, where's the question? It was dark at night. The red car came and just abducted that girl, kidnapped that girl. Nobody was able to see anyone. I mean, so what an absolutely absurd, I would say, ground. Secondly, they have not at all relied on scientific evidence. The FSL report, clearly, there's a body in front of you. There's a gray area who found it first, Delhi police or Haryana police. But there's a body in front of you. Can you deny that? The body, the DNA has been collected, the hair has been collected from the body of the accused and also from the car's covers. And those have been matched by the DNA profiler. It is not our, role to supplement our opinion with that of the DNA profile. Either reject the DNA. But you're saying it's tampered, it may have got spoiled, it may not be proper. But when the DNA is matching, there's a body recovered in the field. They're saying after 3 days. After 3 days the Delhi police has not had an ephemera that in Haryana and X place there's a body lying. On the disclosure of the convicts who are now, of course, who were accused. So how did Delhi police reach there, find a body, find everything? I mean, absolutely, this is scientific evidence. When the call details of the main accused, Rahul, match. He was in Rodai near Jhajjar. When this incident is taking, his mobile call details are matching. But you're saying, no, it doesn't comply with the, IT Act, Evidence Act. I would say they're absolutely just vague ground. There were no grounds and they've just conjectures. Now, to make a conjecture like they've said that the police report, the PM report, the post-mortem report, time of death. The girl has died. Are we denying that? Whether she died 72 to 9, critical to the fact that these guys have not murdered it. Because in every criminal case I've seen, normally, and this is a hospital in Rewari, let me tell you, they do not have the best facilities. They are conducting post-mortems, the doctors. So, and you're denying, how are you linking it to them? The third thing which I want to say is, again, when the semen and everything is matching, they are saying that the DNA, the scientific officer, the profile was exhibited, but exhibiting a profile does not prove its content. I mean, have you heard of anything more absurd than that? My opinion is exhibited, and I'm saying
But
it's my
here's the thing.
opinion. Absolutely. Go
Okay,
ahead.
but here's the thing, Charuvalina. I understand your anguish. I understand your disappointment. But the Supreme Court has no interest in letting these three men go free, scot-free. I mean, they've been accused of a heinous crime. They've been convicted of a heinous crime. Why would the Supreme Court, for no good reason, let them walk free? You have to, I mean, one has to think of that question as well. The
No,
fact is
I'm
that the
not here
Supreme
to
Court
impute.
said
I'm
that
not here to impute
on the
objects
basis
on
of benefit of
I'm to
doubt,
go
we have had to
law.
leave them.
I have to go as per law and the facts. And they have ignored the scientific evidence. This is a fact. Though there are some gray areas who reach before Delhi police or Haryana police. But I mean, these things happen. I don't think there are any lapses in Delhi police's investigation. Maybe the person from the retired police person will be able to speak. I mean, they did the best to their ability. And nothing is a perfect case.
Okay, Ranjana Kumari, just come in here. Before I get in, okay, before we get Mr. Azad, Ranjana Kumari, just come in here. Do you agree with the, I mean, we understand where Charuvali Khanna is coming from. Of course, there is disappointment as far as the family is concerned, as far as, you know,
sorry, ma'am, I'm not talking about.
No, I understand.
I'm talking about facts.
I understand.
Facts as the judgment.
I understand that. I understand that. I understand that. I understand that, and I respect what you're saying here on the show. But Ranjana Kumari, I want you to come in here. You know, what Charuji is saying is this: she blames the Supreme Court. She doesn't think that the prosecution was shoddy. She thinks there was enough evidence. Yes, there were some gray areas, but there was enough evidence. If that evidence was good enough for the trial court, for the lower court, for the high court, why was it not good enough for the Supreme Court? And the Supreme Court has overlooked some scientific evidence that it should have. Are you blaming the prosecution in this case, or are you blaming the Supreme Court in this case?
That's what is unacceptable. That's what is outrageous. Because, the similar evidence, then where will these courts who punished him for, this whole capital punishment that they accorded to these three people? So what should happen to them? What kind of, role they played, lower courts played? So do people have to lose all faith in lower courts now? That Supreme Court does not want to believe in the same evidence which was produced to lower courts, and lower courts have punished them. So where is this whole justice then? And don't forget the case of Kathua, Hathras, all the cases that we know similar things are happening. So in some way, we are seeing that, we are not convinced at all about Supreme Court's decision, about this whole judgment, and also letting them go scot-free. What kind of a justice system are we living with? We created the laws, our country creates a law to protect women. And here what is happening every time, women are being let down, and these kind of things are coming from, everything is happening under the garb of the law, evidence. Okay, if the police is responsible, did Supreme Court made a single statement about who were the officers, what kind of a punishment they should be meted out? Because if they were wrong and these three men would have been hanged, then this would have been the greatest injustice done to these three men. And what about then that girl?
No, but Ranjana Kumari ji, the Supreme Court. But Ranjana ji, the Supreme Court, in addition to pointing out to the glaring lapses in the investigation, the Supreme Court bench is also likening what the trial court's role has been as that of a passive umpire. So they are not just questioning the prosecution, they have also questioned the trial court, ma'am.
Yes, but then what was the basis on which the trial court, the high court, all these courts have, there was something produced before them which were clear-cut evidence? Because see, giving anybody capital punishment is not something very simple. It's not very one-and-one logic. You really have to prove it beyond doubt. You really have to prove it that this is the most, rarest of the rare case in which such a punishment has been given. So rarest of the rare case by the same evidence is produced in high court, then the punishment is given. But when it comes to Supreme Court, they don't believe in those investigations. They don't believe in all those evidences produced before them. So what do we take
Here's
of all
what
this?
the Supreme Court has said. Here's what the Supreme Court has said. Here's what the Supreme Court has said. Before I get in Yashovardhan Azad on the role of the Delhi police here. The Supreme Court has said from the evidence of the concerned witnesses, it clearly transpires that neither any test identification parade was conducted by the investigating officer during the course of the investigation for the identification, 8 minutes, of the accused, nor any of the witnesses had identified the accused during their respective depositions before the court. Therefore, the very identity of the appellants accused have not been duly established. The entire case of the prosecution falls flat on the very first circumstances having not been duly proved by any evidence, much less clinching evidence against the appellants accused. Yes, go ahead.
Listen to me. The girl was dead. In the midnight, she could not. I mean, who would have really identified these people? Tell me one thing. Who, before whom they should have been paraded? Who do you think would have identified these are the three men? Answer my question. I think somebody who knows the law, somebody who has been dealing with these cases should answer my question. Who were they wanting to parade these men in front of? You know, you parade them for identification by the victim. And where is the victim? Victim was killed. She was dead. She was brutalized. And then they want, I mean, I don't understand this at all. I think maybe some brilliant judge or somebody who should be coming to this panel to explain to us, women in India, that if this is what is the rule of law, this is what we call law to protect women in India against rape and this kind of heinous crime and gruesome murder, then we might as well think that we are living in a lawless situation. There is nobody to protect women. So, you know, this is I consider it travesty of justice. I know what I'm saying is very serious, but this is not something which we will accept as justice. I think this is time for government to come in and really ask for review of this whole case. Otherwise, nobody will believe in the law. You know, nobody is going to believe in your system.
Namit Saxena, where do you stand on this? Ma'am, I understand the point you're making. Charuji, give me a minute. Namit Saxena, you are an advocate on record in the Supreme Court. Where do you stand on this?
See, as the Supreme Court has pointed out, one, the investigation was faulty. The investigation is not something which will prove the guilt beyond reasonable doubt is one. Second, the Supreme Court observes that the prosecution also committed so many defaults. They did not cross-examine 10 of the prosecution witnesses. You know, that is very important to have done. Third, what the Supreme Court says is that the trial court is very much empowered under Section 160 of the Evidence Act to unfurl the truth, to do complete justice, and they have to ask questions from their own to dig out the truth, what is actually transpired, in commission of the crime. So, this is not, where we can pinpoint that only the investigating officers defaulted or only the prosecution defaulted or only the trial court defaulted or only the high court defaulted. This is a collective failure of the system. See, all of them collectively failed to find out the guilt as to who has committed the offense. Also, I'll say the Supreme Court also has not, discharged the duty properly. I'll tell you why. Because the Supreme Court could have very well ordered a reinvestigation if they were so, feeling that, that these three people have not committed this crime. They could have very well ordered that please reinvestigate in a time-bound manner and, submit a fresh report. What stopped them from doing this? They could have very well done this.
Correct, because the fact is that a young girl in 2012 was raped, she was brutalized, she was murdered. We know this. Her body was found 3 days later, it was mutilated. We know this. So we know that the crime has happened. Now, if these three guys have not done it, who has done it? For all these years, for the last 10 years, are we to believe that the real culprits are out there? And what is reasonable doubt in this case? And after 10 years, I just want to ask Yashwardhan Azad, since he's been a police officer. So after 10 years, can the case be reinvestigated? Because Swati Maliwal has spoken about it. Namit here is speaking about it. A lot of people are talking about the fact that, all right, if you didn't have enough evidence, if the Delhi police didn't give you enough evidence to prove beyond doubt that these three men were the rapists and killers of that young girl, order a reinvestigation. Is it possible? Is it feasible? Given the fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, कि सारा काम तो charge sheet file होने का ही होता है, right? In 90 days, a charge sheet has to be filed. And most of the work is done during that period. After 10 years, where will fresh evidence be collected from?
Well, Shreya, on a day like this, when Supreme Court is alleging mistrial, and I can say that today, Mirror now has the worst audio for me. I have not been able to hear properly. But I can say this much.
Apologies.
But it's really bad. But the way Advocate Charu Ali has argued and Ranjana ji have made their points, they're very, very strong and they've been put very cogently. A police is a great whipping boy. It's the best to, abuse the police after 2 trials have already been done. You see, Supreme Court has commented on the trial judge. Supreme Court has commented on the investigation and also on the prosecution. Now, Charu Ali has already said, what kind of test identification are you talking about when they said it was dark, it cannot be done? I think the most material evidence we are talking about is the DNA. If the DNA has matched, then obviously very important reason has to be given why it cannot be believed. I think one of the reasons what the Supreme Court has said is that it was lying in the Malkhana for 12 days, and then only all the materials were sent for the forensic care. Maybe the reasons could have been taken, maybe the reasons could have been given. But I'm surprised. As it is, there's a problem in India, and the advocate would bear with me that it is not a prosecution-guided investigation. Today in India, the biggest problem is I don't understand what is the role of the prosecution at all. It's supposed to be independent. Police, when files a charge sheet, at that point, earlier on, the PP would advise me that, okay, isme ye kami hai, isme ye kami nahi hai, isme hum ye karwa sakte hain. Now the prosecution is independent. It's a holy cow. So what do they do in the court? I don't understand. If there has not been a cross-examination, then wasn't it the job of the judge to see that the cross-examination should be done or not done? And if the cross-examination has not been done on this side, then again it's the fault of the prosecution. I really can't understand that why in our criminal justice system things cannot be repaired. Why couldn't at that stage, if the High Court has found every evidence and all right, Supreme Court, of course, has the authority to say that there has been a mistrial. If there's a mistrial, then Supreme Court also has authority to order reinvestigation. And I think, DNA matches have been, confirmed after 30 years, after 32 years. So in this particular case, if that is lacking, that can be done. Look at the strong circumstantial evidence. The offer of that boy was spurned by that girl. Everything is connected. So if there are a few loopholes, it can be ordered. So I'm very happy that Swati Maliwal says that she's going for a review petition. And I do hope the honorable lordships of the Supreme Court would realize that certainly they should allow a retrial or whatever it is done in the lawyer's parlance. But what I don't understand is why things cannot be fixed in this country. Why do we have to hide behind constitution, legal parlance, and all kinds of things? It can be fixed. It should be fixed.
Okay. It can be fixed. Before I get to the political spokespersons, and they've been very patient in all of this and for good reasons. So I'll come to you in just a bit. But Charuji, I know you wanted to say a couple of things during the course of this investigation. You've raised your hand. Help me understand this. I know there is anger at the Supreme Court. There is some anger at the prosecution as well. But if the Supreme Court says it has not been established beyond doubt that these 3 men were the rapists and killers of that young girl, that's what the Supreme Court feels, right? Fact is that if that is what they feel, doesn't Indian law tell us that let 10 guilty people go scot-free, but that one innocent person should not be punished unnecessarily? Is that the basis on which perhaps the Supreme Court is working on? And will you be asking, I don't know, for a retrial or a review of the case perhaps?
Definitely. Let me first answer your second question. We are going to ask for a review. We are working on the review on behalf of the father. And since the review will be done by the same judges, only one judge has changed, Justice Lalit. So we are going to ask for a larger bench. I definitely want a bench of 5 judges to, rehear this matter, to review this matter, if it's allowed. And regarding what you're saying, proof beyond reasonable doubt, what are we saying that the High Court judges are incompetent? They have said proof beyond reasonable doubt, but you have not been, you have seen another circumstance. You see, it's like cherry picking. You're not going on the scientific evidence. Supreme Court is going on like when there were no eyewitnesses, you're saying they were not identified. It's a very strange situation. So that's why I'm saying they're going on conjectures.
Okay.
That this could have happened, this could have been tampered, this was,
Okay.
etc., etc. So definitely,
okay, I understand that. Bhavya, just come in here. It's a matter of perspective. I'm just going to get the political spokespersons in as well. And the reason why we've opened this debate up to politics as well is because the Congress party, Bhavya, is now blaming the BJP for what the Supreme Court has done. Forgetting that in 2012, when we have a bite of Mr. Surjewala blaming the BJP for shoddy investigation and the Delhi police doing shoddy investigation under it, in 2012, when the crime was committed and when all the evidence was collected, has Mr. Surjewala forgotten who was in power? It was the Congress in power. I mean, just to blame the BJP, you can blame them for anything, but why politicize something which, which has hurt so many people across this country?
Instead of talking about politicization, I heard what Surjewala sir just said. I think he spoke more about putting a strong lawyer as a prosecution and review the case. That was his main point over there. And why? You're talking about politicizing rape.
Bhavya, that was not his main point there. That was not, Bhavya, his main point there. He starts by saying that the BJP government has failed, the prosecution under the BJP government has failed. That is what he starts soundbite with, which is why I'm saying that the Congress party has made this political for no reason.
Acquitting the rapists. In acquitting the rapists. That's today's scenario is what he's talking about.
The prosecution, the prosecution that is being blamed was prosecution under the Congress government, both in Delhi and at the centre, ma'am.
Today it is BJP government in the centre which has acquitted the rapists, and the prosecution has failed. He said the government needs to put a strong lawyer to make sure they review the case and the culprits are punished. The main reason why BJP was brought into this question was, growing up, I always felt violated because rape was normalized in this country. And today what is happening? Acquitting rapists is being normalized. And it's every institution of this government, starting from Khatua rape case, to MLAs, took a rally in support of rape accused. Unnao rape case, a BJP MLA was a rapist. Hathras rape case, police system under BJP government, they burned the victim's body instead of even handing them it over to their parents. And coming to Bilkis Bano, the state government itself releases 7 rape accused rapists, and later they have been welcomed in the name of sanskaris, garlanded, welcomed like as if they are warriors returning home. And today this. And we talk about politicizing rape, and this.
No, I understand the larger point you're making.
All these cases which
Bhavya,
made like
Bhavya, I understand the larger point you're making. I understand the larger point you're making. You're making the larger point about people like, Ram Rahim out there, convicted rapist. He's on parole. The fact that Bilkis Bano's rapists are out there as well, etc., etc. I get the point you're making, but in this case, what you're saying is completely illogical. Completely illogical. But I'll let Shatarupa, who's a BJP leader, respond to what you're saying.
Thank you for finally letting me have my say. You see, when I was called for this show, the first question which struck me was, this is a Supreme Court verdict. Yes, it is extremely devastating. As a woman, I understand that this is not called for, to say the least. So, but then why am I, as a BJP spokesperson, why have I been called on this show? But no, I understood that the Congress has really got nothing better to do than to accuse BJP of anything that goes wrong in India, completely forgetting the futile time and then the way that they had spent in governing India for the last 65 years before we came onto power. So, but right now, after listening to Bhavya's pretty, beating around the bush, I really don't want to answer to that. But Shreya, through you, I would like to, state a few facts. Number one, BJP has incredible respect for women all over India. We as women, Karyakartas, can vouch for this. And it has happened. Yes, I do accept the fact that there have been several unfortunate incidents, even in BJP rule. But I think action has been taken immediately, and I really don't want to get into the details of that. But we really, as a party, as the central government, we cannot, under any stretch of imagination, be blamed for what the Supreme Court decides. It's a different organization altogether. I mean, this Congress has to understand. These are central agencies. Supreme Court is the judiciary. We are the executive. This difference Congress has to understand. The last thing that I want to say is, I like to wrap up what I've just said, that we have full sympathy. And I mean, when I'm saying full sympathy, I am saying this with the deepest concern in my heart. I am a woman, and I completely understand what this young girl's father is going through for the last 10 years. Having acid poured in your eyes is something that really...
Okay, I think we've lost our connection to
sorry,
Shatarupa, and probably we should
I'm
wrap up our chat. Okay, I'm just completely out of time. But the question now is, Shatarupa, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to thank all my guests for joining us as well. Question is, can a reprobe or a re-investigation be ordered? The lawyer on the panel, the lawyer of the victim, and her family have already told us that they are going for a review. They'll certainly be looking for a larger bench to have a at that case. That was Advocate Charu Wali Khanna who was joining us. Thank you all very much for joining us on